suit coat. So,
Totally fine.
so if I look like a hobo, that's why.
You look like you. That's great and more relaxing. It's like a conversation.
Would you rather have me dressed like this for all the podcasts? I can do that.
Why
I don't
not?
have to be all prim and proper.
All right. That's great. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cheyenne's Forum. Today is August 6th, and we're in with my dear friend Tom. So nice to see you again, Tom.
Nice to see you, Shane.
Thank you so much for coming to our program. And Tom worked in FBI for almost 30 years, and he worked as assistant director of FBI for 5 years, and he's retired now. And I really appreciate your time every week to discuss the situation that's happening right now in America and in the world. And Tom, today I'd like to discuss with you about three, I think it's a very important issue. The first one is about the July 13th, the assassination attempt. We just heard from Senator Josh Hawley, and he told the world that the whistleblowers from Secret Service told him that it looks like the top of the Secret Service are trying to cover up something. And the guy in charge on that day, which is the commander, we still don't know who he or she is, and he or she still stay in the position which you mentioned about 2 weeks ago, and you think it's very, very dangerous situation. So why did he do that? That's question one. The second issue is we right now know that 99 people who are on the name list of the terrorist group are allowed to get into our country from the Southern Open Board. So why that happened, how dangerous it could be. And also the Middle East situation right now, the Israel and Lebanon, it seems like they're going to get into the war. So do you think it will be the beginning of the World War III? And I heard that we have 6,000 Marine soldiers are sent to that area last night. So these are three main topic I'd like to discuss with you today. And if we have more time, I have a little interesting to talk about the situation happened in British right now. So it seems like the whole world is it's a chaos. So first thing first about the situation at Secret Service. What's going on there?
Well, I think that even though the director has resigned
Right.
and her deputy director, who is basically the same as her,
Uh-huh.
has been sworn in as the acting director. He's not confirmed as the director, but for now and probably for the rest of the administration will be the acting.
Mhm.
But what's interesting is that the senators like Josh Hawley from Missouri and Johnson, Wisconsin, have whistleblowers from the Secret Service coming to them
Mhm.
and saying, this is the situation with our management. Can you do something? Can you help get the word out to have these corrections made to help make the Secret Service stronger? Now, the things, some of the information that's come out bit by bit, incrementally since the assassination attempt have been the people assigned to that event, to that rally, starting with the whistleblowers. When Howley talks about what the whistleblowers have told him, he's hinted at, well, they refer to as the site manager or site event or whatever. And in the FBI, we used to call that the on-scene commander,
I was
the
thinking.
person who's in charge of that event.
Mhm.
And that means coordinating all of the efforts with all of the agencies, all the different people involved, but yet being in charge of it. And so, not that that has to be a man, but it's just interesting that they sneak that in the dialogue that this site commander or the person in charge was a she.
Mhm.
So the implication of that, besides DEI, the other implication, and they're saying, the whistleblowers are saying, she isn't experienced enough, competent enough, organized enough, and that really she's like third or fourth string. Because on that same day, the Secret Service has 31 people right now that it's responsible to protect. As
Mhm.
soon as the new vice president nominee by Kamala Harris gets sworn in or agreed to by the Democrats that that will be the vice presidential candidate, they'll have 32 people to protect. So they all don't have rallies, but many of them travel and give speeches and do other things. So the idea that they had to protect former President Trump doing his rallies, but responsible to protect him as the former president, um, is interesting because they pretty well made it clear that the primary protectee was going to be the current president,
Mhm.
Biden, the current vice president, Kamala Harris, the first lady, Jill Biden, and other people that were designated like that. Now, here we had another protectee giving a speech also in Pennsylvania on the same day as the Trump rally.
Mhm.
And then another event in the eastern part of Pennsylvania. So you have three events occurring in Pennsylvania, and it was pretty clear that Trump was going to be the lowest priority,
Mhm.
even though common sense would tell you, and other threat warnings have been issued, that Trump, out of that group, Trump probably got 99% of the threats against him. But that didn't matter. They give him the least protection. And what the whistleblowers are saying is that the person that was going to be in charge of the Secret Service that day wasn't really the most qualified person, that she was not a good manager. They had other issues with her. Now people will argue, well, that's because they didn't want a woman in charge and they're sexist and all that. Well, that may be, except it's pretty self-evident now that the management of the Trump rally was completely incompetent,
Mhm.
completely negligent in the protection of Trump. Then another piece that came out was that the presidential or main detail is usually very experienced and elite Secret Service agents. And apparently, the normal team that gets assigned to protect Trump were reassigned to protect, sounds like, Jill Biden. And in the case of that, the replacements that they brought in to take the place at the Trump rally were Homeland Security investigative agents, HSI,
Mhm.
who are not trained in protection, who are not the first string, if you will, of protective agents to protect whoever they're going to protect at a rally, but they're not as experienced as senior Secret Service agents.
Mhm.
So what the whistleblowers are saying is that the Secret Service agent in charge at the scene was not competent,
Mhm.
not experienced enough, and
Mhm.
actually in charge of mostly HSI agents who aren't even as highly trained to do protection.
Mhm.
So that the whole plan was not well thought out, orchestrated, managed, or any of that, which is self-evident. When you see the videos and hear the commentary and you see the film of the shooter on the roof of the one building with clear sight of the president or ex-president giving the speech, it's pretty clear that they were not doing due diligence.
Mhm.
Now, some commentators, some former military commentators and analysts have said, in their opinion, that this was a plot to get Trump,
Mhm.
and that the 20-year-old shooter that was eventually killed by Secret Service
Mhm.
was really a patsy. That they had him walking all around the area. He's in all of these videos, strolling around the grounds of event, and later on the roof crawling on his belly and, with the gun and all of that. And even then, the shooter was able to get off 8 shots. So one of the 8 hitting Trump's right ear and basically damaging the top of his ear, missing his skull by inches, which would have been fatal. So that's how close we came to having Trump killed. And yet, it sure looks like all of the citizens that were there were yelling at the police about this guy, and then he's going up on the roof. He's got a gun. He's crawling around. And the sniper teams that shot at him were on the other side of Trump on the rooftop of another building. Now, once this, they were trying to identify this kid and never did in time. Then the shooter opens fire,
Right.
manages to get 8 shots, and then the Secret Service counter sniper, 1 shot to his head, and that ends him.
Mm-hmm.
But he still gets off 8 shots.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things, having been an on-scene commander at FBI major events, not a Secret Service event, they have their own commander. But I've been the commander where FBI SWAT has the lead, but we're bringing in hundreds of police officers, local police officers, state police, other federal agents, maybe DEA, marshals, ATF, because we need 200 or 300 law enforcement officers to maybe raid 10 or 15 locations. We're taking down drug groups in those places or making mass arrests, and have to do it that way. So one of the things in the pre-event meetings, which start a couple days early, and then one more on the final day before the event. Now, those type of arrest situations we usually did about 5 o'clock in the morning. So we would have the pre-event meeting at 2 in the morning or the evening before. But the idea was that every police officer was able to be in communication, radio communication, with the command post. And in the command post, you would have the leaders of the different agencies who would directly report to the commander, to the on-scene commander. So you really had, the individual police officer on a rooftop did not talk to the commander directly, but talked to the leader that he was working for, or the SWAT team leaders that the SWAT teams directly worked for. Or if we had aviation, like a plane in the air for surveillance, the aviation, all the pilots communicated with their coordinator, their supervisor. So you would have the on-scene commander in the command post with maybe 5, 6, 7 representatives of each component, specialized component of the FBI, and of each high-ranking officers from each agency. And the idea is that you would know every officer assigned to the event, where they were going to be, and who was with them to communicate. Now, the police officers would not have the FBI radio frequencies, but their leader would be they would be communicating with their police officer representative in the command post, who is standing basically 2 feet away from the commander and relaying the information. Now, what you hear, and the other thing is, this came up, and I was involved in a study several years ago after I retired. It had been proposed that police agencies like the FBI, and this was for the FBI, marshals, DEA, ATF, that these agencies did not need rate all their different radios with all their different frequencies. And then if we didn't have nearby antennas, we would put the plane in the air would have a repeater so that those individual small radios could communicate in the plane, and the plane would act as a relay of the radio system, much like television signals are relayed around the country. But in any event, a proposal had been made to save a fortune in what it costs to have all those radios and repeaters. And the idea is, well, there's no reason now with your smartphone that you can't, dial in a text message into the command post or use your radio. And so anyway, we went to several cities, consulted with all the different agencies. I led the study, and concluded and recommended to the Department of Justice, do not go to that system, because if you end up in a high-speed chase, how are you going to be sending text messages? If you're doing all of these activities, you need a radio that you can wear and maybe have a voice activated or a thumb button activated so that you could be driving, you could be doing other things, but communicate directly with the command post, with your leaders in the command post. So eventually, my decision or recommendation stood. The Department of Justice agencies did not change to the new, to using phones only, basically smartphones. Now, what's interesting is that when the Department of Homeland Security was created, Secret Service was moved under them.
Right.
They used to be in the Treasury Department because they were investigating counterfeit money in addition to having responsibility for protection of the president or other senior officials. So what happens is they're under Homeland Security. Now, I've heard a couple of people being interviewed from Secret Service saying they were sending text messages to try to get information about the shooter on the roof of the other building, didn't get responses in time or anything. That told me that whoever was in charge of the Secret Service 8 or 10 years ago, when this proposal came up, was stupid enough to adopt it and not keep their radio system.
Right,
So
right.
that the guy is trying to look through their scope and asking the command post, who is this guy? Sounds like they were sending text messages, which is so inefficient. But in any event, gradually, all these little points have come out about the way the Secret Service was deployed, about how they positioned the police officers. Now, at these events, when it's a protection responsibility, the Secret Service on-scene commander is the boss. So it doesn't matter if you have the head of the state police or different county police or township or city or anybody else out there. The only people the head higher than the on-scene commander would actually be the director of the Secret Service at the time, Cheadle, except she's not on scene. So as on-scene commander, you can overrule everybody else. You're the commander.
Right.
So if some life-threatening situation, you give the command. So apparently the Secret Service agents were trying to have this kid, the shooter, identified, never got an answer until Crooks, the shooter, opens fire, wounding the president and killing one of the spectators and severely wounding other spectators. So that fact is a deficiency in how the people were assigned, where they were placed, who was in charge of who at the whole event. Then we hear also, and I don't know if this is whistleblowers or it just came out in the natural interviews, that the Secret Service did not hold a meeting with all of these officers and agents, that normally about 9 or 10 in the morning on the day of the event would have had a meeting with their bosses, with everybody involved, because these agencies, you don't have a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania every day of the week. So even the police would not know each other. If the state police assigned people to this, different counties assigned people, different cities assigned people. I think Pittsburgh's about 50 miles away. They could have sent officers to help. They wouldn't all know each other. They don't work together on a daily basis. So they can't recognize each other by face. So when this shooter, the kid, is wandering around on the grounds before even going on the roof, people are calling the police about him being suspicious. And we have him in all these different videos, and nobody knows who he is. Nobody can identify him. Now, one of the reasons the pre-event meeting that morning or the night before, if it's going to be an early morning operation, that you have these meetings to establish not only where each of the people, the 250 cops or whoever, where they're going to be posted, but how they're going to communicate with the commander, on-scene commander. So it could be, in some cases, you might put a Secret Service agent with the police, and that way the Secret Service guys can radio into their command post with the police officer right next to him. It sounds like in this case, they had nowhere near the necessary staffing of Secret Service to do something like that. Now, what's interesting is that normally in the FBI, if we're going to do an operation in a small town area, remote area, we're not going to have enough FBI agents that work in that area. There's not going to be enough police officers in that area, but we could bring in 100 agents from all over the country, come into that city a couple days early to be involved in this event. So you have enough personnel. So for the Secret Service, okay, they assigned some of their agents. In fact, the agents that usually protect Trump to protect Jill and or Kamala. So when they divert those agents and they see the need to do that, they could have called every Secret Service office in the country and requested additional help to fly into Pittsburgh and go to the scene and help in this event. So in some cases, we would refer to that as an office special. In other words, everybody in that FBI office is going to work on this, or a bureau special. When we're bringing in agents from all over the country, from all different field offices to come into that city to work the event. And again, the on-scene commander is in charge of anybody that comes to work on it, federal, state, or local. Right. And it sounds like in this case, you had little or no good management. That's evident by the deployment, by the response, by everything about this was mismanaged by the Secret Service. They admit it. Oh, it's a big mistake. We made a big mistake. But the mistakes were not just right at the event. The mistakes were they didn't have it well planned to have enough Secret Service personnel at the event. And then they could control what the police do and who they are. So in this case, when you have the Secret Service agents on the other roof, the counter snipers, they're calling in or texting into the command post because they've already received, the police have already sent a picture of the guy on the roof to everybody. Right. Does anybody know this person? Does he work for you? Right. And it's very common, and I shouldn't say this, but it's not uncommon for you have some small county, let's say, county sheriff. Maybe he has 5 or 10 deputies. Not uncommon for that sheriff at the last minute to go, I'm running for re-election. It wouldn't hurt for me to be able to say, my deputies were involved in this and they helped participate in protecting the former president. So what might happen is they just tell one of their deputies or more, go to that event and help, get involved in responding to it. And the problem with that was Secret Service didn't have a pre-event meeting where everybody comes and you can identify who's a good guy, who's a bad guy. Well, you can't identify the bad guys, but at least eliminate the good guys and say, okay, if there's somebody on that roof with a gun, it's not a police officer. Because the counter snipers are requesting permission to neutralize crooks on the roof, and they never get an answer because the command post, they don't know the answer. Is he a good guy or not a good guy? And the commander doesn't want an issue an order to the snipers, go ahead and shoot him, and find out later it's one of these overly ambitious deputies from a nearby county who, is a deputy sheriff and has 5 kids and all of that. And he's just been shot in the head by a Secret Service agent. So that's why the commander never answers the snipers of good guy, bad guy until the bad guy starts shooting. And then they go, well, he's not one of us if he's firing at Trump. That's when they find out. Now, meantime, the delay in that is the shooter fires 8 shots. Right. Now, one of them clips off, a piece of Trump's ear, and then the other ones hit people in the grandstand, killing one, wounding others. So that's what happens. So you easily, in that delay, in the mismanagement of the Secret Service not knowing who is at the scene, who's a good guy, who's a bad guy, that you easily, an inch variation in that shot, if it hits Trump in the head, he's dead.
Right.
And that's
So,
a powerful AR-15 is a powerful, it's not, a small 22 or something that he might survive being wounded. It's probably, you would have had a situation much like the Zapruder film where you would have live on camera shooting in the head of Trump. There would have been horrific scene for the world to see. And
mhm,
we'd be still seeing that 20 times a day, even now. So that's the mistakes that were made. One compounds the other, and so from start to finish, it was mismanaged all the way through
mhm,
by the Secret Service commander
mhm,
and others,
mhm.
but mismanaged nevertheless.
Sure. So, well, thank you for explanation. I have three questions. The first question is why at Secret Service don't tell anybody who she is, the commander is. Do they have the right to keep secrets about it?
Yeah, they would normally protect the identity of individual agents who involved in something, especially since the internal inquiry or the FBI's inquiry into the whole event hasn't been made public. A final report hasn't been issued. So
Okay.
that's why you don't have guys like Senator Hawley or the Wisconsin senator. You don't have them coming right out and saying they put a woman in charge and they shouldn't have put her in charge.
So
What
the
they're hinting at is whistleblowers are telling them she's not competent. She's not highly respected. She shouldn't have been in charge.
right,
Now, you've already, before this whole event, you've had the former director of Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, telling everyone her goal was that, in a certain amount of time, she wanted 30% of the agents in the Secret Service to be women.
right,
So
right,
for her, she had a DEI agenda
right,
to
right.
put women in charge. Now, the problem with that is that regardless, it doesn't matter if it's an airline pilot or, some other official in the government, private industry, a medical doctor, when you pick the color of the skin, the sexual orientation, trans or non-trans, when you pick LGBTQ issues as the criteria to select somebody for a life and death situation,
Mhm.
that's not the same as picking, that eliminates merit.
Right,
So the philosophy of the United States from day one, even not day one, go to Martin Luther King, who advocated that people be judged by their merit,
right.
their character, not the color of their skin. Well, right now under DEI, it is the color of their skin, or it's their sexual orientation, or are they trans? Are they gay? Are they this or that?
Mhm.
Taking priority over merit. Is that the most qualified? Now, normally in the Secret Service, to be on the president's protective detail or the president's advance team, very highly coveted position. So it's competitive. They want the best qualified, the most experienced to be on that detail. But now, when you're talking about being in charge of a major event, same thing. You want the most competent person that they can put in charge of it. And in this case, it wouldn't matter if they brought an agent from Los Angeles to come to Butler and be in charge of this. They don't have to pick the local Pittsburgh or Philadelphia or some other nearby office. They have thousands of agents all over the country. They can pick the best qualified out of all of them and fly them in, fly other teams in, fly additional support in. So this is going to be an even more important issue now that the campaign is almost under full swing. Now,
Mhm.
Kamala Harris has just nominated the governor of Minnesota. Today, she said that's going to be her pick for vice president. So once that decision is the rest of the Democratic Party or at the convention next 2 weeks or whenever, when that person becomes the vice presidential nominee of the Democratic Party, then you're going to, like I said earlier, you're going to have 32 protectees,
Mhm.
and some protectees are going to be in greater danger than others because there is so much emotion
Mhm.
involved in this particular election.
Mhm. That's
So, the conservatives versus liberals versus progressives, MAGA, you name it, there is going to be a lot of emotion
mhm.
associated with the election in a little over 100 days, I think. And then, after the election till the person is sworn in. So you have, for instance, with Trump, the progressive movement and very liberal people have made no equivocation. Trump will not spend one day in the White House.
Mm-hmm. Right, right.
And they've tried everything now for a couple of months or a couple of years to keep him from being able to win re-election. So
Right.
starting with the states that said, we're going to keep him off the ballot. And then the Supreme Court says, no, you can't do that. So he's on the ballot. Then you have all of this lawfare, all of these trumped up cases, criminal cases, 91 counts, and all of that against Trump. And so far, one by one by one, he's pretty much prevailed. The one case where he's been found guilty, 34 counts,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many constitutional and procedural issues with that that almost every scholar that I hear, legal scholar, is saying he's going to win on appeal. Now, that appeal might not happen until after the election. Who knows when that'll finally happen. But the prediction is he's going to win every one of his cases. And then most recently, for instance, the issue had come up about Jack Smith, the
Mm-hmm.
special prosecutor named by Merrick Garland.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem is Merrick Garland did not follow normal procedure. Now, if you have a United States attorney, like the U.S. attorney that investigated Biden for the documents in his house, garage, and offices, Hur, that U.S. attorney is a U.S. attorney, meaning he's already been through the nomination process, the
Right.
Judiciary Committee hearings, and then approval by the entire Senate.
Mm-hmm.
But in the case of Garland appointing Jack Smith, he's a civilian.
Right.
He's not a sitting U.S. attorney. He's not been approved. They didn't submit his nomination to the judiciary for review or to the entire Senate for confirmation. So now you've had former attorney generals petitioning the Supreme Court saying he's not really authorized to run this case. It's not basically not constitutional. But
Mm-hmm.
in any event, the Supreme Court also ruled on a case involving um, immunity of the president. When he's doing presidential duties, he should be immune from state and local prosecution. Because otherwise, every prosecutor in the country, 250 prosecutors, 2,500, whatever, if they decide in their jurisdiction, I don't like him, I'm going to prosecute him, there's nothing to stop them. And then they would get the glory of,
Right.
charging the former president, all of that. So
Mm-hmm.
you had the Supreme Court basically throw out the Florida documents case. That means the Mar-a-Lago raid, all of that was for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
As many scholars said at the time, many non-scholars, that includes Trump, said at the time, it wasn't legal what they did.
Right.
And yeah, the Supreme Court basically saying, you're right, it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So piece by piece by piece, the lawfare, which is the use of the law to wage warfare on Trump, has been almost completely unsuccessful.
Right.
Now then, you have all these issues that are subject to future debate and future motions by the defense to go to the appellate courts, to go to the Supreme Court, and possibly get thrown out that way. So
Right.
now you have the Democrat leadership basically saying, we tried this, and that, and the next thing, and the lawfare. We've tried everything. And we failed really to get him removed from being on the ballot.
Right.
And he has huge support, so he could get elected. So
Mm-hmm.
now you have several people on that side
Mm-hmm.
saying, we have to at all costs, keep him out of the White House.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been able to do it all these other methods. The only other method would be if he doesn't live long enough to go to the White House.
Right.
So that's another issue. And the other fact with that is constant the liberals, progressives, Democrats constantly referring to Trump as Hitler.
Right.
The reason that is so important is that Hitler was responsible for about 100 million people dying in Europe as a result of World War II.
Mhm.
Citizens, soldiers, you name it. And you've had many, many scholars debate, what if 1933, Hitler is named Chancellor of Germany?
Mhm.
He invades Poland in 1939.
Mhm.
So you have so many, and that's really the official main start of World War II.
Mhm.
Now, many scholars even saying they think it's moral, and it would have been moral if someone assassinated Hitler in 1934, 35, 36, 30, or any time during the time he was chancellor, all the
Mhm.
way up to 1945, the end of the war. So what they're saying basically, if it would have been morally correct to kill Hitler before Hitler kills 100 million people, if that would have been okay, then, by comparison, it would be okay to assassinate Trump because
Mhm.
he's Hitler. So that's why this rhetoric of comparing Trump to Hitler is so important. And the longer they keep doing it, he's a fascist, he's a racist, he's a sexist, all of that. Well, even if he was, that's kind of like, it's not a death penalty offense to not like women or not like, certain types of people, which even though it appears that it's not true, doesn't matter. But Hitler, that's in a class all by itself.
Right.
So
Right.
if you convince one person, maybe a 20-year-old, in Pennsylvania, go kill him because you would be saving the world a disaster by keeping him from being president. That issue will not stop. It'll intensify.
Mhm.
And I think that the deep state that wants Hitler dead, and you have uh, many former military and intelligence officials stating they think that this was a deep state plot to kill Trump.
Mhm. Mhm.
And one of them is Colonel Tony Schaefer, who was also in the State Department and an intel officer. I just saw him this past week on a podcast, which is called Judging Freedom,
Mhm.
hosted by a former judge, Andrew Napolitano. Anyway, Schaefer's on that show absolutely saying that this shooting of Trump was part of the plan to kill him. Didn't
Mhm.
succeed, but that was part of their plot.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that they're not going to, this is going to continue and be more sophisticated. And shooting former President Trump doesn't have to be the only way to take him out. They
Right.
could poison him, could shoot him, they could
Mhm.
shoot family members or sabotage his airplane.
Mhm.
Now, what's
Right.
interesting is that most of the assassinations done, that are attributed to Putin in Russia when he takes out a rival, many of the assassinations around the world were actually done by blowing up the airplane that the person rode on,
Mhm.
as opposed to shooting the person. So that, I hope that they are protecting Trump Force One, the president's airplane, or using that as a decoy and having him fly in other secret ways to go from city to city. But they need to be planning for Trump's safety from
Mhm.
the minute he leaves his residence, wherever that might be, to get in the car, to go to the airport, to get on a plane, to get off the plane at the destination, get in another car, and go to the event. Those
Right.
are all places that he's extremely vulnerable.
Right.
And how many people is the Secret Service devoting to that? He's paying for some of his own protection, but still, he's extremely vulnerable, and the threat is only going to get stronger the more they attempt to kill him and fail.
Right. Right. Well, thank you so much, Tom. And then I remember uh, Josh Hawley said that the whistleblower told him that in that day they do not even check ID when people get into the strict area,
Right.
which totally unacceptable. And also, just like Josh Hawley said, the test of Secret Service to protect Trump at that day is a total fill. So why this lady still on the position, is still doing his job, is not get fired, or at least hold her at some special status, stop her from doing her job? Is that she right now she's still in the position, she still do the same thing, which is
Well,
big.
she may not be in the position. We don't know. She would have to be each event that the Secret Service is going to protect.
Right,
They would name an on-scene commander for that event. It wouldn't necessarily be the same person for other events.
right.
So I would expect that because of the investigation into this person
Mm-hmm.
and the culpability of what she might have done wrong and could get fired and all of that, could get prosecuted depending on the degree of negligence,
Mm-hmm.
um, I would expect the Secret Service would not put her in charge of another event.
Let's hope so.
You would expect, but
Okay.
I
Mm-hmm.
would expect that they won't do that.
Sure.
Now, who they name to be in charge of the next event, we'll see.
Yeah.
But
That's the thing. And also, I just want to make clear that you mentioned 33 people protect the Secret Service to protect one protectee, like Trump
no,
go
I
to.
said that they're responsible for 31 different individuals that they must protect
Oh,
on a regular basis.
oh, okay. I
So
see.
take a look at right now you have Trump, Melania,
Oh,
the others. You have Obama, you have the former presidents all qualify for Secret Service.
uh-huh.
Then you have other senior officials qualify for Secret Service. And if you have the head of state from any country coming into the United States, Secret Service is responsible to protect them. Now, if you
Okay.
have a deputy minister from one of those countries come in, then State Department, Office of Diplomatic Security, who also guard our embassies, they're responsible to protect
Gotcha.
a visitor who is not the head of state, but a high ranking official, cabinet official in the other country. Now, you
Okay.
just had Netanyahu come to the United States. He's a head of state. Secret Service protects him. You had a anniversary of NATO, or you had some other meeting a week before that. Every one of those heads of state that came in would qualify for Secret Service if they sent their prime minister or somebody junior on their cabinet. Then diplomatic security would be responsible for that. And diplomatic security works closely with the Secret Service
Mhm.
because of that, because you could have the same event
Right.
have Secret Service protectees and have diplomatic security protectees. And
So
then in all of that, in any case, the police working with all of them.
sure. So for example, like Trump, how many Secret Service assigned to him to protect him on rally? At least five, six, seven,
Now
eight.
they won't tell you.
Oh, okay. We don't know.
And apparently it's not many, put it that way.
Right, right. Okay.
So really what the Secret Service did on the 13th was actually prove how vulnerable Trump is.
Right.
That even at this event where they should have had the most protection
Hmm.
wasn't even close to enough. And
Hmm.
then it comes out that everybody thinks the Secret Service on the stage did a magnificent job jumping on Trump, making sure he stayed down behind the bulletproof banner.
Hmm.
Then you find out that from whistleblowers that there might have only been one actual Secret Service and the rest were Homeland Security investigators, HSI. Now, I've talked on, many times in the past that the need to identify who the good guys are at any event, whether it's a major arrest situation or an event like this, that over the years, the FBI learned, in some cases, the hard way, where an agent at the scene, a local police officer might have accidentally shot and killed him, thinking he was robbing the bank or something. So the FBI decided that even though you wear a suit and tie, theoretically, for your daily investigative activities, if you're doing a tactical raid, put the windbreaker on over that jacket if necessary, that on the back says FBI.
Mhm.
because FBI is widely known all over the world.
Mhm.
Now, DEA is pretty widely known, so their raid jackets might also. And so at the event, you might have FBI agents, DEA, U.S. Marshals, ATF. Those are pretty well-known agencies.
Mhm.
Now, back after 9/11, when Homeland Security was created,
Mhm.
and they created their main investigative group, Homeland Security Investigations. And they started out with raid jackets, HSI.
Mhm.
And all of the police at the scene were going, who the hell is HSI? We
Right.
don't, the public didn't know, the police didn't know. So then agencies like that, if they're worried about being misidentified, they went to the raid jackets that just said police.
Right.
And
So,
police is a word known all over the world. Now it
right.
might be, Italian or something, it might be police, or in Spanish, policia, but it's so close that pretty much everybody knows police.
Right.
Um, but at this situation where they're in tactical stuff, like the snipers on the roof, maybe in the small print on the back of their vest, it might say Secret Service. But
Mhm.
from a distance, other people can't tell. Is that a police officer? Is it a Secret Service agent? Is it a Homeland Security? Is it DEA? Is it FBI? If it's FBI, it's going to be very widely
Mhm.
advertised on that person, FBI, so they don't get accidentally shot by another police officer or another law enforcement officer.
Sure. Yeah, so this is a big issue of the security of Trump. And then we have a big issue on our open board. So we heard that 99 people that on the list of the terrorists are get into the U.S. So my question is, we all know why they can come here because of the open board policy. And my question is, are we totally lost control or lost track on these people? So when they come into the States, because they're highly dangerous people, where are they? Do we know? Or we just lost track?
Who knows? We probably don't know. How would we know? Now, they get issued a telephone, which theoretically you could track that phone. They get money, cash.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when they leave the facility where they get that stuff, throw the phone away.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the local electronics store, get a new phone. So, so who knows if we know? We don't know that what we don't know.
Yeah.
And
Kind of.
you've had the director of the FBI say, "Well, we're extremely vulnerable. National security is at stake because of all these people that have come pouring in." Now, other people have argued, well, it's his duty to do something about that. Go to Congress, go to Homeland Security, and I've said that his main duty is to alert, policymakers, White House, State Department, Congress, of what the vulnerability is, of what the danger is. Now, if there's an actual plot that they learn of, yeah, he's absolutely responsible to stop that plot, arrest the bad guys, don't let them carry out a terrorist attack. But otherwise, to generally put out a threat that, well, and we're letting in tens of thousands of terrorists, just letting them in, turning them loose, well, it's not specific enough to do anything with that other than tell the public, tell Congress, tell the White House, which goes in one ear and out the other. So, so really, Christopher Wray is covering his behind saying, well, I warned the country they should have done something. But his warning is empty because the policymakers, whether it's Biden, Kamala, Mayorkas, you name it, Congress, they don't seem inclined to stop it and do anything about it.
So to my opinion, this is my opinion. I think anyone involved opening the border is the enemy of our nation because this is obvious dangers. You put your people, you put your community, you put your country in danger. So why you allow these terrorist people get into this country? That is so stupid. And
Reason they're allowing that is that, let's say the individual moves to a certain area, Texas, California, whatever.
Minnesota.
That
That's good.
Minnesota. When they do the next census, they will count them as another body in that jurisdiction. And
Okay.
that will determine how many votes, how many electoral college votes, how big the congressional district will be. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that these immigrants are going to vote, but they're going to count toward the goal of creating more slots that are open. And the idea of the Democratic Party is that they will be able to have these jurisdictions will get bigger. They'll get more Democrats on the ballot and get more Democrats in Congress. So they're not necessarily, at least they're not saying it out loud, that they're expecting these terrorists to vote or these migrants to vote, but they will increase the numbers in each district, and
Right.
Democrats can fill them with people that are allowed to vote. So that's the
Right.
idea, is they're trying to expand the base of voters for the Democratic Party.
So in one word, they want the power. And doesn't
Oh,
matter
that's
how
all they ever want.
the
That's
power.
the bottom line. Whatever they want, when they're trying to raise money, when they're trying to do what their version of whatever it is, it's because they want power and they want it on a permanent basis. That's why they make these proposals to increase the number of people on the Supreme Court or make District of Columbia and Puerto Rico states, because they're heavily Democrat, and that will guarantee them 4 Democratic senators
So
and then almost a permanent majority in the Senate. So
it's a
that's
pure,
their goal, power.
it's a pure communist. And I wish that American people would realize that the Democrats right now is not the Democrats at all. They are the communists. They are
And I
put
think that you're right. I think that when people hear the word communist, it's been so overused that, like socialist or progressive socialist or progressive liberal, that the real doctrine is Marxism.
okay.
And where you've had authentic Marxism, Soviet Union, the PRC under Mao, well, even now, but starting with Mao in 1949, or other North Korea, other countries that are pure Marxist countries, then what you see is the party rules, the state rules. And in order to help that agenda, that's why they're so against the Catholic Church or any strong church. They're so against families. They don't want children to be under the control of their parents. That's why they push these things of the school can decide, a teacher can decide if your kid's going to be undergoing sexual surgery
And then
to change a boy into a girl or girl into a boy. That should be the decision of the school district or the state, the government, not a parent. Parents should have no say. So all of those doctrines are Marxist.
right.
Destroy the family, destroy the church or the religion, and give the state more power.
Mhm.
And so that's use words, change the meaning of words. Really, the profit of what they were going to do was in the 1940s, a socialist author named George Orwell.
Right.
George Orwell writes the book 1984, but he was trying to make fun of the Soviet Union style Marxism or communism. And
Mhm.
he writes Animal Farm. And
Right.
Animal Farm shows a society of animals on a farm. Who's in charge? It's supposed to be democratic. It's supposed to be everybody's equal. And you
Mhm.
have one of the leaders named Snowball. The other leader is a pig named Napoleon. So 2 pigs are talking and
Mhm.
they say to each other, all pigs are equal, but some pigs are more equal.
Right.
And that's how, at the time, Soviet Union, the Politburo worked. Everybody is equal in the country, but some are more equal. The party members, senior party officials, they're more equal. They're in charge. They tell you what to do. They run the state. The state is in charge. So that's the philosophy. And it started in the United States around the time of Woodrow Wilson's presidency more than 100 years ago.
Mhm.
Marxism from Europe was coming in. Karl Marx wrote his books, 50 years earlier in London and put out the Communist Manifesto. Well, that was picking up steam. And what people don't know is in 1908, that's why the FBI was created. It wasn't to chase gangsters or
Mm,
organized crime. It was to go after these communists.
mm,
We're
okay.
trying to gain power and run for election. And one of them put in jail named Eugene Debs, he's
Mm,
actually trying to run for office, run for president in the Communist Party from jail.
mhm.
So that's what you had. And they infiltrate the labor movement. They infiltrate, different power bases in the United States. And that was building really more than 100 years ago.
Mhm, mhm.
So what's happening now is very similar to that. It's just evolving and
Right,
becoming stronger and stronger.
right, right. So it seems like some American people really enjoy or really want to become a communist party or become a Marxism nation.
Well,
So,
Americans are so spoiled that they don't know and so poorly educated in history and geography that they don't really know what's happened. Now you look at, what's referred to as the greatest generation, the Americans that fought World War II, that joined the military. So that we have a couple 100,000 in the military now. We had 12 million people in the military during the early 1940s, during World War II. So that generation, you look at the celebration in Normandy, the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, which was June 6, 1944, where the US and Canada invade and try to go into Europe to eliminate Nazi power for all the way to Berlin, and the Soviets were coming from the other side and meet in Berlin to shut down Nazi Germany. But the people that remember that, you see them being interviewed, some of the newscasts that now are 100 years old. That if they were 19 or 20 on D-Day, they're 89, 90, 100 today.
mhm.
Very few survivors that are left to tell people why we fought, what we were doing. And you don't have any, most Americans, if they're under the age of 80 or 90, don't remember the sacrifice of that. They maybe heard about it from their parents or grandparents, but they didn't experience food rationing, gas rationing, the threats, the air raid drills, experiencing many members of their own family being killed in combat in Europe or in Asia, fighting the Japanese. So right now, and then you have people growing up now, my generation, because we somewhat remember that, but you have these 20 or 30-year-olds that are out demonstrating that have no clue. And, they just don't have any clue and they feel no threat because we have the Atlantic Ocean, we have the Pacific Ocean. So they don't feel that the US is in any kind of military jeopardy, even though they should get an idea that in the modern era, maybe there aren't bombers that can fly over here from Europe or Asia, or battleships or aircraft carriers, but there are submarines
Mhm.
sitting off the coast of the United States, both coasts, that can fire missiles, nuclear missiles that can hit U.S. targets in about 10 minutes. Washington, and we don't know where they are. They're lurking in the ocean. They're stealthy machines, and we can't really identify them where they're at. So this idea of, now when people say we're on the verge of World War III because of Russia and the Ukraine or Israel and Hamas or Hezbollah or Iran, that they don't believe that. They think, what? No, they can't hurt us here. We're safe in the United States. Well, we're not so safe. But it's good to think, yeah, we're comfortable. We're spoiled. We're fine.
So it's like when you forgot history, history will repeat itself.
Absolutely, absolutely true.
Right. And also the last question, we only have about 3 minutes. It's about the Middle East
That's because you're talking too much. Allow more time.
So what do you think about the Israel and the other country around. So the World War III will start there. What do you think the situation will go to? Which direction?
Don't know. And I'm following this closely and listening to the different scholars and political pundits, military advisors, and they're all basically saying, especially Israel and Hezbollah, southern Lebanon, people don't remember that in 2006,
Mhm.
Israel invaded southern Lebanon and went after Hezbollah, and they lost. Israel got chased back into Israel,
Mhm.
and Hezbollah continued as it is. And that was the end of that, 2006. So
Mhm.
now today, Hezbollah, launching missiles, Israel's launching missiles, and they're both sides are not launching their full capability. They're kind
Mhm.
of testing out each other's defenses and threatening. So you have Hezbollah now threatening Israel. We're going to launch a full-scale retaliation. And the next day, we're going to launch a full-scale retaliation. Well, we're still waiting for that, and
Yep.
it may happen. It may not happen.
Mhm.
We'll see. And then for Hezbollah, they're getting their backing from Iran, and then possibly Russia, and possibly China. Israel has the idea, probably good reason to think so. No matter what they do, if they invade Lebanon, go
Mhm.
after Hezbollah, and it gets bad, well, the U.S. will come bail them out.
Mhm.
We'll send in troops. We'll send in fighter jets. We've got ships in the air, aircraft carriers, battleships in the area. So, so we would not allow Israel to be destroyed. We'll come to their defense. And therefore, Israel can make all of these threats, and they have massed tens of thousands of soldiers at the border to go in,
Mhm.
and they have the missile capability to launch at Hezbollah strongholds in southern Lebanon.
Mhm.
Don't know who's going to push. Right now, the wait today is that you had this missile that hit uh, people on a playground over the weekend. Now
Mhm.
you have reports that the missile was actually struck by a defense missile and then broke into pieces, and then it went down and
Mhm.
struck the kids on the playground. So they weren't targeted, in other words. The
Mhm.
kids were not the target playing
Mhm.
soccer on a hilltop of
So
either side.
it's like a
But,
classroom damage.
huh?
It's like a classroom damage. They're not purpose to hit the kids. Is that the case?
Well, that's what they're saying. The kids were not the target.
Okay.
The missile was deflected and came down on top of them. Now, so each side says, "Oh, we're gonna retaliate," but they haven't yet. So maybe after a day or two, cooler heads have prevailed to pick a different issue to retaliate for, which they may get today, tomorrow, the next day. We don't know.
Mm.
But it,
Well,
nobody knows for sure what the next step is going to be and who's going to take it.
sure. So
But
we'll
obviously, tensions are high and it could happen any minute.
Sure. Yeah, well, so we'll see next week. So see what's going on there. We have so many friends just left a message, and Yui said hi, and Grace hi, Owen hi, and Shu Guang said good morning. Many thanks.
Any questions for me from the audience?
Actually, yes, I think Yui said there are so many low-level mistakes that people cannot believe, and it is inevitable to explore conspiracy theories where the shooter number two. So she's talked about there shooter number two there. And also she said, in addition to the Secret Service sending out sniper for the first time of the day, another strange thing was that the mainstream media covered the rally that day, which they have not done before. The mainstream media there. That is very, very weird because they don't do that before. So meaning, I think her meaning is maybe they know what's going to happen or something big will happen. So they went to the Trump rally at that day. And he said, okay, yeah, that's her concern. One is there are so many low-level mistakes happen, so people just don't believe that there's not on purpose. The second is how about the shooter number two? Is there a shooter number two? Or if yes, who is the shooter number two? And the third is why mainstream media were there that day, which normally they will not cover the Trump rally.
Well, I think it depends. First of all, I think it's not been confirmed that was shooter number two.
Mhm.
And secondly, I'm not convinced that there was a shooter number two because if there was, Trump would be dead probably. So, we only know of for sure Crooks being the main shooter, and he wounded Trump and killed another person, wounded another person. But it doesn't seem to me like they were prepared to have multiple shooters, like at the assassination of John Kennedy, multiple shooters set
Mhm.
up for that. So at least as of now, it doesn't seem like it. Now, I agree with the idea that there's so many things that weren't done correctly that
Mhm.
it's almost hard to believe that's all a series of accidents.
Mhm.
It really looks like the Secret Service was negligent on purpose.
Mhm.
But let's let the rest of the investigation go. More whistleblowers come forward
Mhm.
and see what happens with that. But I think right now, here's what's unfortunate. By law, the Secret Service is responsible to protect a whole group of different people, starting with the president.
Mhm.
If any of the protectees actually get attempted to be killed or hurt, the investigation is not the responsibility of Secret Service, it's the responsibility of the FBI. Now, the next question is, how much can we trust the FBI right now?
Right.
I don't know. And I'll say that I don't completely trust them. So
Mhm.
that means, in a way, other than whistleblowers, we don't really have an effective and trustworthy, competent, diligent investigation to find out exactly what happened there, exactly where all of the issues are that need to be corrected.
Mhm. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, let's
Agreed.
hope. Or maybe when Trump go back to White House, we can trust the new FBI. And yeah, so at that point, maybe we can have some thorough investigation about this.
Yeah, I hope so.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for your time and for your explanation and list of the things that's going on here right now. Very important. And then also, I know that we don't have time this week. The next week, some other important issue we'll continue to discuss with you.
Yeah, there's always something.
And thank you so much. And thank you so much for reminding us. Just remember the 1984. Just remember the Marxism. Just remember the communist is here in the States. Don't take for granted for our good life. Just we need to realize the real situation right now in here. And we
Great.
need to fight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
next week.
See you next week.